Guys, you know what this channel needs? Pro-African propaganda. Let's see what the latest pro-African propaganda is about.
And today we're going to talk about the Atlantic slave trade and the fallacy of blacks selling blacks.
Oh, goody. And I guess we're just going to call facts fallacies now. 2 plus 2 is 4 fallacy. Let's get it on!
So I actually did this video a while back and I actually deleted it so that I can create a new one that was a little more in depth.
Yeah, delete this one too, please, because you didn't really combat the whole idea that Africans sold each other into slavery, unless you did an even worser argument with an even worser video. Oh, dear God.
And a lot of people have actually been asking me to, remake this video pretty much. And so here it is. So initially I thought I would never do a video on this because, I really thought that, people knew so much about the Atlantic slave trade. Boy, was I wrong. The historical perspective on this topic has literally been murdered and adulterated nearly in totality. Like, nobody has any idea what went down.
No, I'm pretty sure I do. Native Africans are selling their other Africans into slavery, sometimes rival groups and sometimes the criminals of their various respective tribes and I would say civilizations, just like they're doing in Libya.
And other people tend to take bits and pieces of information just to make a point and take it completely out of context.
So what context, may I ask you, justifies another person selling another person into slavery, if I may ask?
So of course when people talk about this topic, they tend to say, well, black people sold other black people, right? And so they leave feeling vindicated as if this statement is some sort of trump card. Okay, so the problem with this statement is that it's disingenuous to begin with. Here's why. You can't take a 20th century mindset and apply it to 16th and 17th century people. It simply doesn't work like that.
Okay, tell that to people who use slavery as a trump card for them getting reparation and compensation and saying, oh, 400 years of slavery, I need my check and my land. Like, tell that to them, bruh.
There was no black power or pan-Africanism back then. Like, black people didn't become black until they came to the New World. They shared a similar culture, they shared a similar experience, and they began to speak the same language. That's when they became black people.
So what is his argument here? Is his argument that Pan-Africanism and Afrocentricism taught black people that slavery is wrong, or that before like 1865 black people didn't exist, so how could they sell themselves to slavery? I'm a little bit confused. Enlighten me of this.
For example, in Western Africa alone, there are thousands of different ethnic groups who speak a different language, have different cultures, and have completely different worldviews and religions. So why in the world would they view each other as the same when they don't even speak the same language?
You don't have to view somebody as the same or similar to you to treat them with respect. If somebody from a rival school comes to my college and I bash their fucking head in, that doesn't mean that just because they're from a rival college, I deserve to bash their head in or treat them with disrespect or ill intent. What's this logic here, my friend? Are you saying that black people didn't sell each other into slavery because my diversity? What?
I find it interesting that people are willing to accept the differences between Europeans and Asians, but when it comes to Africans, they all of a sudden want to paint one broad stroke and completely ignore the diversity.
I mean, you just ignored the diversity. You didn't compare West Africans to North Africans, which there's a big physical difference. You said that you compared the European to the Asian. I mean, for one, they're in different continents. Two, they have different eye structures, different facial structures. Most of the time, well, maybe similar hair. I don't know, but it would have made more sense if you just compared like West Africans to North Africans, because they're like way different, a little strange there. But continue. I want to see where he goes with this diversity stick.
For example, when the Romans pretty much went into Northern Europe and were raping and pillaging the entire region, nobody ever then goes and looks at that history and says to themselves, wow, look at all these white people brutalizing other white people. The Romans even made slaves out of their Northern European counterparts, like the Germanic tribes, the people of Hispania, and the Celts themselves, aka other white people.
Yeah, the reason why people don't bring this up is this was like 2,000 years ago. And besides, you don't see people from the UK or British people go down to Italy and tell the Italians, hey, where my reparations at? You enslaved my people? It hurt me for generations. Like, yeah, that's why people don't bring it up. I mean, are you kidding me here?
Now, given that history, you'll never hear a soul say, wow, look at all these white people selling other white people into slavery. What a crime. Well, why don't you hear people say that? Well, because people understand and respect the historical differences and the historical perspectives and the diversity of that region and of those people.
People don't say it's a crime because back then it wasn't a crime. It was just everyday commerce and how they did business back then. But this was like 2,000 years ago, bruh.
The Romans and the Greeks seem to have made it very clear that these pink-skinned northerners were not like us. Marcus Cicero, hailed by historians as one of Rome's greatest orators, had this to say about northern Europeans, specifically from Britain. It has been ascertained, too, that there is not a scrap of silver in this island, nor any booty, except from slaves. But I don't fancy you will find any literary or musical talents among them.
Uh-oh, he said that they didn't have no musical talents. You know this nigga mad. I'm just kidding, but really, what does this have to do with anything? I mean, do you see any modern, like, Europeans, such as the Britain or the French, talking about Rome? Well, talking about Italy in this case, and saying we need reparation, compensation, land, agriculture, etc. Anything. Like this is false equivalency, buddy.
But for some reason, when it comes to Western Africa, we all of a sudden develop amnesia and forget proper historical perspectives in favor of advancing the whole black on black crime narrative, if you will. How convenient. Well, why is this black on black crime narrative so convenient? Well, because nobody ever says white on white crime or Asian on Asian crime. It's a disingenuous, deflective argument to begin with.
It's less of a black on black crime and more on a native African on black Westerner crime, if you ask me, or black American crime, shall I say. And I'm pretty shocked that nobody's asking like South Africa's with all its numerous resources and minerals. Nobody's asking them for reparation for their like ancestral crimes or any of the other numerous African countries that sold their people into slavery, like the Congos. None of them are being asked to pay reparations to the black Westerners who they sold their ancestors into slavery. But whatever. This is a side note of mine.
And it's very important that we understand that. You see, the truth is, all violence matters.
Yes, all violence matters, but let's just give an example. When neighborhood A has about like 2 rapes and neighborhood B has about 365 rapes, neighborhood B has to have more attention to it because they have more crime. Not saying that neighborhood A does not have crime. It's just that neighborhood B have more crime and thus deserve more attention. That's what people say when they talk about the disproportionality of black on black crime or whatever crime you want to bring up. You know, hey.
To understand the nature of slavery in Africa, let's look at one of the longest lasting empires in West African history, the Mali Empire. So what was their decree on slavery? Well, the Mali Empire, like most empires around the world, participated in slavery. They even had a constitution called the Corocan Foga that regulated it. The Korkan Foga declares the following: "Do not ill-treat the slaves. We are the master of the slave, but not the bag he carries." So basically, this is a federal mandate of the Mali Empire and further proof of the humane treatment of slaves in West Africa.
What kind of vague bullshit is this? That law absolutely sucks because it's very vague. Laws are not supposed to be vague and just open to interpretation. I mean, ill treatment to person A could be whipping your slaves 30 times instead of 20. Ill treatment could be raping your slave like 5 minutes instead of like maybe 2. Like that law absolutely sucks, man. I thought you were actually gonna pull out some trump card that actually lays down what is the idea of how you should treat your slave, or whether you should be malnourished, anything like that. Come on, man.
Testament to this humane treatment within Mali is the fact that Mansa Sakura was actually a slave before he became king of the Mali Empire.
So Benjamin Franklin was a slave before he became a founding father. Does that absolutely justifies the slavery that was in America? No, come on, man.
So the question then becomes, how did you become a slave in West Africa? Well, there are two things. It depends on the socio-political atmosphere of the given region and your social status. For example, most people became slaves through warfare. The overwhelming majority of slaves were war captives between rivaling ethnic groups. And when you add religion in the mix, it gets even more complex. Take for instance the most renowned scholar of Timbuktu, the Songhai scholar Ahmed Baba. He pretty much helped us define who could legitimately enslave other people and who could legitimately be enslaved themselves within the Songhai Empire. The opinion of Ahmed Baba went on to shape the attitudes of Muslim West Africans on the legitimacy of enslavement and the permissibility of trading in slaves. He literally goes on to list a few ethnic groups he deemed as enslavable.
So basically, he rambles on about how black Muslims enslaved other Africans because they're not of the faith of Islam. Because Islam bans like slavery, but only for Muslims, other Muslims. You can enslave non-believers all you want. That's what they're doing in Libya.
This is pretty much how you became a slave in West and Central Africa. You were either a war captive from a rivaling ethnic group, you were a repeated offender, you committed a heinous criminal act, you were in debt, or simply both your parents died.
So I'm gonna end the video off like this. I mean, even by his own words, he kind of goes against the whole tribalism is why the Africans sold other Africans into slavery, because even from his own mouth, other Africans sold Africans into slavery in their own tribe if they were orphans, in debt, or criminals. So the whole idea of, well, Africans sold other Africans in slavery, but they were rival Africans, so somehow it makes it just. And, you know, back then you couldn't use morals to you couldn't use modern day morals back then. Come on, man. We're not talking about like arranged marriages here. We're talking about slavery, which, you know, still happens today with the whole prison system, even in America. But still, I mean, a person could bring up the whole idea of marital rape, which stands that a person could actually rape their significant other, because back then they had this whole ideology that since you're one when you married, a person cannot rape themselves. So I get if somebody would justify that with like the time period, but rape, no matter what age or what period, is wrong. So is slavery, by the way. So yeah, that doesn't really work here. But I'm just going to end the video right here. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. And I'm out, guys.